Hello, and welcome back to the Choose UCalgary Podcast. As always, I'm your Season 8 host, Karah, and today we're sitting down for part 2 of our economics chat with Trevor Tombe. Stay tuned to hear more.
So one of the areas that the University of Calgary does really well in economics and in other areas is electricity policy. Now that might not sound like the most interesting or important area of policy, right? You flick a light switch and on they come, and that's the most that we ever think about it. But one of the biggest challenges we face in the years and decades ahead is climate change and shifting away from the use of fossil fuels and emitting greenhouse gases. And a key part of that is electrifying so much of what we do in transportation and elsewhere in our daily life. And that is going to require a deep rethink of electricity markets.
Yeah.
How do we integrate renewable power generation, wind and solar, which has a different type of generation profile than a fossil fuel-based generator? So huge open questions that are critically important for our ability to successfully tackle our climate change challenges ahead. And so we have faculty here on campus that do some of the most frontier work in electricity. I'm thinking of Professors Blake Schaefer, Erica Myers, Lucia Muhlenbach, Jennifer Winter. So many researchers here are engaged on that issue, teach in our program, but also have real frontier work in these areas. And having the opportunity to connect with these faculty who are really shaping how our electricity systems are going to develop is a really unique opportunity for students to learn in real time the challenges that we're facing and the way that we're trying to do things differently as a society to improve our long run future.
Yeah, having that, having the research happening and then going straight into the classroom and to our students is such a cool way to learn. You're seeing basically history being made, right in front of you, right in the classroom, right from your professors. It's a very cool opportunity, and I do agree with you. It's something that UCalgary does really well, especially in that electricity sector. And then we've spoken a little bit about research. And because the University of Calgary is a research institution, are there any specific initiatives or programs that allow students to bridge the gap between classroom learning and becoming involved? So I know we talked about the Capstone project and different internships, but maybe volunteer opportunities or other paid research opportunities for undergraduate students in economics?
Yeah, maybe this is a good chance to highlight the Bank of Canada's Governor's Challenge. And so we mentioned earlier about the challenge of inflation, and that's what central banks are really focused on. But there's so much we don't know, and there's so much they don't know too. And I mean, they're doing the best job they can with as much data as they can, but there's some really deep uncertainties here. So what we and other universities do with the Bank of Canada is put together student teams that compete against each other for providing analysis and insight to the Bank of Canada. And so these are usually teams of about a half a dozen students who do deep dives into understanding what's going on in the economy, what's going on with labor markets and interest rates and inflation, and try and actually formulate a set of real recommendations to the Bank of Canada. And so they will present their research and their recommendations, and finalists will then travel to Ottawa and present these literally to the Governor of the Bank of Canada, right? The number one person in that important organization. And so Calgary has been among the finalists, I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, where the team goes to Ottawa to present to the Bank of Canada. Last year, the winner of the whole competition was the University of Alberta. Great team, of course. So it's a real competition between economics students at different universities where they do the research. They use the tools that they learned through their prior courses, apply them to a critically important question for really all Canadians, where there's lots we don't know, and then present their findings to the Governor of the Bank of Canada in person. That's a really exciting kind of economics equivalent of a business school case study. case competition,
Yeah.
if you will. And so that's one way where it's the students leading the research and actually delivering the research to the individuals at the Bank of Canada who need to hear it.
Yeah, students are actually able to see their research make an impact. And that's so cool. I did not know that was, a program that happened in Canada. That's really cool that, our students get the chance to be a part of that and get to work with that, real, I like to call it like real world data, and actually take, the data from Canadians and work with it in a practical setting to make a difference.
Exactly.
Instead of just working with, that imaginary data set that you get in class, you actually get to, take that real world data and use it, which is really cool.
And I think one of the important lessons when you do original research is learning that things are not as clean as they are often presented in the classroom when you're trying to answer questions that don't have an answer, and there's lots of uncertainty. It takes experience and skill to try and overcome that uncertainty, try and find the insight in the mess of data that's there. And so these experiences are a really great learning opportunity as well.
Yeah. And then kind of moving more into, aiming at prospective students and their journey to the University of Calgary, is there any advice that you would give to a prospective student in grade 12 who may be considering the economics program and how they can make the most out of their academic degree with us?
So I think the advice I would give to any prospective student, regardless of where they think they might go, is one of the great things about a university is how much is available to students to learn and gain experience and gain insight from and build connections with each other as well. So first, try out a lot of different experiences, different courses from many different areas. But not just the academics. Also try out different clubs and different networks and groups on campus as well.
Yeah.
You're going to learn as a student so much of what you want to do with your life later on here in these couple of years in your undergraduate experience on campus. So try out a lot, and if it doesn't work out, that's fine. Experiment, see what works and see what doesn't. And that absolutely means taking a couple economics courses as well. And I think we do our first year economics courses, and I teach in the first year semi-regularly here as well, to try and really showcase just how broad and applicable economics as a discipline is. Now, it's not for everyone. No field is for everyone. But I think it's incredibly valuable and super interesting, and everyone should give it a shot.
Yeah, definitely. At least trying out those macro and microeconomics classes just to see, like you said, a lot of it is interdisciplinary, and you can take it into many different faculties and programs and use the knowledge that you learn from that in, your degree. So it's definitely worth it to check those classes out. Have you received an offer to the University of Calgary? Do you want to explore campus and connect with your future faculty representatives? Come and join us on April 6, 2024 for You at UCalgary, your event for all things UCalgary future students. Details about how to register will be emailed to all those eligible to attend. And then what are some of the core skills that students will gain from joining the economics program at the University of Calgary? And then how do you think these newfound skills are going to help prepare students for, the future job market, the changing job market in Canada?
So there's several core skills. I'll highlight one that I think is more important than almost any other, and that's an ability to work comfortably with data.
Yeah.
Just the way that technology has evolved over the past several years, the wide availability of data in so many aspects of life today, the way that decisions in almost every organization, in every sector of the economy or the nonprofit sector, or every department in government using data to inform critical decisions is today unavoidable. And so having the skills to understand data, find patterns in data, use tools to try and make sense of sometimes messy data, that's a real core skill that economics in general focuses on a lot.
Yeah.
And we do here in particular at the University of Calgary. And so that's a skill, again, that even if you don't go on in economics in terms of a career, those data skills are portable across almost any sector, any occupation that you may go into.
Yeah.
And how does that distinguish us from, say, statistics? I'll be careful here. We do great work here on campus too in statistics, but economics thinks a little bit deeper than just the raw numbers and the mathematical techniques. We really try and deeply understand what's behind the data. What's the process that's generating it? And trying to make sense of those deeper questions is where we have a kind of unique value added.
Yeah. Yeah. And then kind of focusing in a little bit more on you, are there any ongoing or recent research projects that you're working on currently that you feel are really going to impact, next year's economics programs and the year after and the year after that?
Yeah, so a few areas. I think I'll focus on some recently published work that myself and another University of Calgary professor, Sonia Chen, have published. I guess we have 3 papers now in this area, really trying to understand what's behind inflation. What caused prices to rise as high as they did, and what's causing inflation to decline, quite frankly, as rapidly as it is, and where might we go from here? And so in this research, we really try and apply some very simple insight from economics. No one can go through a first-year economics course without seeing a supply and demand curve. Many high school students will have seen a supply and demand curve at some point as well. And this might seem like a really trivial graph, but it has a lot of really rich insight behind it. If demand for something goes up, then the price will go up as well, right? But so too will the quantity that consumers are, consuming of this particular item. But if things get more expensive for producers, if it's harder to make something, then we think about that as the supply curve shifting to the left. Right?
Yeah.
And that'll also make prices go up, but quantities will go down. Very simple insight that we try and apply to some unique data in Canada to understand whether it's demand or supply driving the high inflation that we've seen. And that's a very important question. So there's a big public, semi-political debate also between many of our government leaders about whether or not it's government spending that's behind inflation, or whether or not it's global energy market developments and input costs rising. So there's this big debate that's critically important around how much was demand and how much was supply. And we try and drill down into the nitty-gritty of that data to try and see what was behind it. And we find a mixture of both. There's demand's accounting for some, supply is accounting for the bulk of what led to the high rates of inflation that we really did see. So I won't get into all the details, it's not the place for that, but I think that research is interesting because it shows that simple tools can sometimes be applied to novel questions to yield new but important insight.
Yeah.
And I think this is going to be something that is a point of concern for years to come among Canadians. Even when inflation comes back down to normal, prices will not go back to where they were. But inflation, might also be subject to more volatility. Some feel that the futures we especially transition away from fossil fuels will feature more volatility in energy prices potentially, and that might translate into more volatility in inflation. So having more tools to understand what's going on in terms of inflation will be increasingly important.
Yeah.
Because for the past 30 years, inflation's been pretty stable around our 2% target. So now we're living in this moment where not just today, but I do strongly think many years to come, inflation will be this very interesting issue that at least my generation has not had to think much about. And so the more we can bring in data, empirical tools to understand in real time what the pressures are, the better. So I think this is one example of the type of research that will hopefully create value in the future.
Yeah, and create value for those future students in the classroom who are learning those deeply relevant skills that they're going to need moving forwards, just in life in general. Like you said, in an economics, profession or not, they're skills that can translate forwards no matter what you're going into. And then, kind of tying in here to this last question, but looking ahead, how do you envision the economics program evolving to meet the needs of future students? And then what different opportunities do you see for students in the program to help shape and change the future of economics at UCalgary?
Well, I noted that we have a current focus on applied teaching, applied research, data-grounded empirical approaches to economics, and I think that will grow from here, increasing the amount of expertise we have in analyzing big data, bringing in machine learning techniques that some of our faculty, Professor Arvind Magason in particular here, have real expertise in. And so combining tools that you might typically think of as belonging in computer science into the economics program. That's certainly what we see in lots of other areas. We're seeing that now with the rise of AI everywhere you turn. And so increasing capacity there is a real goal for the department, and I think something where there will be real value for our students for years to come, well into the future after receiving their degree, because the world is certainly not moving away from the increasing use of data and computational techniques and now artificial intelligence. And so being able to incorporate that into the program is, I think, very valuable for us. And now what opportunities are for students to actually shape the future of the program? Well, we're really lucky here at the University of Calgary to have a very active group of undergraduates in economics through what is called the Society of Undergraduates in Economics. And we engage with them regularly as a department to learn about what their priorities are, where we can improve, what they'd like to see. And they also produce, for each other and their undergraduate colleagues, networking events with industry, mentoring and tutorial sessions to really help in areas where there's some difficulty, math preps in particular, or they organize panel nights as well recently where they're bringing in professionals from outside the university to come speak to the club and participants here around what the issues are. So having a very active, organized group of students in economics here at the university, that's critical for making sure that we keep delivering value and improve from here.
Yeah, definitely. The students are a big part of it as well. So thank you so much for coming on the Choose UCalgary podcast today, Trevor. I'm sure future students are really going to love listening in about economics at UCalgary and why the program is evolving and ever-changing, and definitely something to consider for their future degree and profession.
Well, thanks for having me on. It was really great to be here, and I'm excited to welcome all these new students into our program.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for listening to part 2 of this episode of the Choose UCalgary podcast. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at choose.ucalgary and on Facebook at the University of Calgary Future Students. As always, DM us if you have any questions.